Okay. All right, you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start the readings. Enough of this garbage talk. I love Daniel. He's amazing, right? He's so beautiful. God. Fills me with joy. I loved this book, The World Afloat. I also recently read Lydia Davis's new collection, Can't and Won't, and I don't know if I genuinely am ever going to read a full-length novel again, because what's the point when you get everything you could possibly want in terms of language and in terms of emotionality in a story that spans one page? You're saving yourself a lot of time, and you're still getting bang for your buck. And yeah, so this book is amazing. I really loved it. So I will now introduce M.A.C. Farrant. She's the author of 10 collections of satirical and philosophical short fiction, a novel-length memoir, My Turquoise Years, a book of humorous essays, The Secret Lives of Litterbugs, and the stage adaptation of My Turquoise Years, which premiered at the Vancouver Arts Club in 2013. A full-time writer currently residing in North Saanich, BC, her work has been nominated for many awards, including the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize, the Van City Book Prize, the National Magazine Awards, the Gemini Award for the Bravo short film adaptation of her story Rob's Guns and Ammo, the Victoria Book Prize, and 2 Jessie Richardson Theatre Awards for her play My Turquoise Years, among others. She is a regular book reviewer for the Vancouver Sun, the Globe and Mail, and the National Post. She's taught writing at the University of Victoria, the Victoria School of Writing, the Banff Centre for the Arts, and was writer-in-residence at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. She is full of accolades. Her work is funny and surreal and heartwarming and wonderful. Please welcome M.A.C. Farrant.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here. I always feel a little bit embarrassed or strange when I hear that introduction among this list of nominations, because I haven't actually won anything. And, you know, apart from some writing contests early on in my career, that nobody remembers or knows about, and apart from getting grants, which is something you just don't tell anybody about. The only thing I have ever won is at a elementary school raffle, which was a bottle of black hair dye. And so maybe one day soon. Anyway, to begin this reading, I'm going to do a little piece here in the spirit of competitions. It's called Nearly There. There was a competition for the job of playing myself. I saw the notice pinned to a tree. It said there'd be plenty of shifts, the graveyard for sure, and that the applicant should have a stomach for fear. It said the person selected would be restless and lean, dreamy but sober, loyal and sane. It said forget about holidays, they weren't in the cards, but there'd be control of sorrow so you could stay afloat. And a guarantee of love so you wouldn't be alone. Work would absorb you, but money would not. Perks you'd invent as you hurried along. Time would be generous until it ran out. I decided to apply. It was the chance of a lifetime. And now for the good news. I'm on the short list. This one came as a result of shopping in Shoppers Drug Mart and buying shampoo and toilet paper, and the woman cashier handed me my package and said, "There you go, lovey." So this sort of ran back. This is called Couple Sucks Saying Candy. Culturally, for Ron and me, Shoppers Drug Mart is all there is. So when the cashier called me Lovey while handing over my bag of toilet paper and shampoo, I felt happy, fulfilled. I was still feeling that way when an older man holding an apple pie behind me in the checkout line at Safeway tapped me on the shoulder. "Look at that," he said, pointing at the headline in the National Enquirer. "Jen, pregnant and alone. Aren't you glad you're not famous?" I thought about this on our drive home and decided, yes, I'm glad we're not famous, because imagine a man on a motorcycle taking a picture of Ron and me sharing the hard candy Ron found in his jacket pocket. It must have been there for years. A lime one wrapped in clear plastic. We didn't think twice. I sucked the first half and Ron finished it off. But after that I saw the headline, "Couple sucks same candy," and knew the world would find us disgusting. So full marks for anonymity. At home, we continued our afternoon by pulling apart the jigsaw puzzle from Christmas. Only the sky, the head of a fish, and a few trees were finished, and it was just about March. The puzzle had become a burden. You could spend hours and hours and only find one matching piece, so that pretty soon night would be falling with supper nowhere in sight. It was a revelation when I told myself that some things in life could go unfinished, and Ron agreed. Actually, pretty much everything can go unfinished, we decided, and especially the jigsaw puzzle, which we had come to hate. There was a bowl on the side table filled with pieces of the large bear, who would never inhabit its shape. They went into the jigsaw box along with the broken sky, the head of a fish that would have been in the bear's paw, and several small trees. I wouldn't mind taking my life apart and returning it into a attractive box, I said, mindlessly, I suppose, because of not having to finish the puzzle. And Ron said, "Think again." "Oh, right," I said, "I'd forgotten about that." So I thought instead about how happy I am with our home and all the machinations thereof, and with my goldfish Hilda, who gives me no trouble, and with my little commercials for the family, who frequently do, our girls with their toenail palace, and our son Boyd, who still wants to be an astronaut, and my brother Doug, who's never paid me back for totaling my car in 1979, a sweet little Volkswagen. And I thought about nature, how every once in a while there'll be a day with sun, and a few clouds, ones the way I always want them to be, clouds like shampoo foam. This one is for all of us who are on some sort of spiritual quest. It's called Smooth. During the night, I burst out of my fur. Before this, I'd been covered in it head to toe. It came off in an explosion. Chunks of brown fur lay on the sheets, the bedroom floor, the dog's crate by the corner of the room. The force of the explosion woke me up. I was sweating, but quickly realized the significance of what had occurred. Losing the fur was an enormous thrill. It was beyond a thrill. I have never known such happiness. I had to tell someone. It was 3:15 in the morning. I woke up my husband. "Feel my arm," I cried. He didn't stir. "Wake up, feel my arm, it's smooth." He rolled over. "What the hell?" "Feel my arm, feel my skin." I was hysterical with joy. "There's no fur, I'm free of it at last." He threw an arm my way and mumbled, "Yes, yes." "Now feel my neck," I urged. "There's no fur there either." This was so amazing. He pawed my neck. "Do you realize what this means?" I cried. "I am now a completely smooth woman." He touched my head. "Your head is bald, Olivia," he said. "Bald as an egg. Better check your pubes." "This is just Much like you to spoil my happiness, I cried. I finally achieved something of real importance in life and you don't even congratulate me. Congratulations, he said, but you're still bald. Do you realize how long I've waited to lose my fur? How important it's been to me? How hard I've worked? All the books I've read? All the visualizations I've done? Was that what you were doing Saturday mornings, he said. You know what I was doing Saturday mornings. I was attending my shedding your fur workshop. Susan down the road lost her fur ages ago, and Lorna and Mary and Lynn, none of them have fur anymore. How do you think it's been for me, the only one of my friends still walking around fully furred? Can you even begin to imagine the pitying that's been going on behind my back? Can you? He was completely awake now, as was the dog that had come out of her crate and was sniffing the fur on the floor. I've always liked you covered in fur, he said, raising himself on one elbow to look at me. That's the woman I married. I'm too old for change. Did you check your pubes? Raymond, well, did you? Here, on the most profound night of my life, when I have at last reached the furless state of being, all you can think about is my pubes. I'm going to miss your fur, he said. You'll get used to it. He got out of bed, picked up several patches of fur, and together with those lying on the sheets, arranged them on the pillow. I think I'll go back to sleep now, Olivia, he said, nuzzling the fur sadly. Too excited for sleep, I lay on the bed for the rest of the night thinking about tomorrow. Oh, the world is mine now. I got to thinking about those old cliche sayings, and this one was about chickens crossing the road. So the title of this one is called Chickens and Us. They sing in a foreign language like opera, I'm told. A squawk is a kind of aria fugata. Mostly, they're like old men gathering in the meal replacement aisle at Sydney. That's why Emily Dickinson crossed the road to speak with them about death. Kurt Vonnegut thought the chicken's chemical makeup was hilarious. It reacts as if it was some kind of puritanical harbinger of death, he said, and that's why it keeps crossing the road. Kurt Vonnegut did a drawing of a chicken's asshole that has since delighted many. Chickens will peck each other to death. They can't help themselves once there's a wound. They're like us that way. They love the smell of blood. Although shaped differently, the chicken's beak works similar to a human's mouth, ingesting one small truth at a time. Chicken Little syndrome is the condition of hysteria that results in paralysis. This happens when the sky falls on a chicken, another way in which chickens are like us. At a chicken funeral, sad music is played while a chicken relative carries the dead chicken wrapped in tinfoil towards a brightly lit fast food restaurant where a rotisserie awaits. A chicken brain is about the same size as a man's thumbnail. Like ours, it's not big but sufficient for their needs. Unlike us, a chicken is without a love interest or a dog. In my day, my father said, we didn't ask why the chicken crossed the road. Someone told us the chicken crossed the road, and that was good enough for us. Ernest Hemingway said the chicken crossed the road to die. In the rain, he added, while writing several novels about this. I cross the road because even though I am a boiling fowl, I am still able to cross the road. There are 24 billion chickens in the world and only 1 billion road. What will happen next? I found this question in a magazine. How do you know if you're a birder? The answer, you are a birder if you have ever faked your own death to attract vultures. Someone must know about you and me. And I'll close with a found, I guess you call it a found poem. In Calgary, when we were reading, both Nikki and Natalie read a couple of found poems that were really delightful. I hope they read them again tonight. I have one in my book. It's called, I'll tell you first of all, it's made up of English subtitles from Hong Kong films. So the title is, "The Americans Will Not Save You for Christmas." Greetings, large black person. I have captured you by the short hairs, by the short rabbits, sorry. I'm sure you would not mind if I remove your toenails and leave them out on the desert floor for ants to eat. Take my advice or I'll spank you a lot. Quiet or I'll blow your throat up. Darn, I will burn you into a barbecued chicken. I have been scared silly too much lately. I have knife scars more than the number of your leg hairs. How can you use my intestines as a gift? Gun wounds again? You darling, lousy guy. You always use violence. Thank you very much.
A conversation with Wade about how people like to write about islands. We're compelled to it as a contained space somehow. So it's a bit cliche maybe. But this is a space that I see pretty much every day, and it felt it deserved something substantial in terms of time and commitment and to be heard, if only through me. The island, I am told, is not for sale. I am surprised to be mistaken for a potential buyer. At planning, the recollections of the place are of ownership and issues, and I describe my project. They express a kind curiosity, perhaps even delight. How to say, then, that this effort is an outcrop of disunity, a gross sense of settlement in the royal city, a call and a response. I could not explain my purpose other than to say, I am writing a book of poetry, and this just a minor purchase of property. Pages damaged, restored, discolored, stained, or detached wholly or partially obscured by errata, slips, and tissue, etc., are filmed for the best possible quality of the image. The following diagrams illustrate the method. Poplar Island, pop hat tree, individuated alike, lazaretto, camura, tavera, north, brother, angel, our current, worse conditions of confinement, subjects of capture, property in the strictest sense, bound in a given moment, called to ground. Unitary in the midst is scattered, breathing this next while is a kind of evolution, stratifying dialects from a strict sense of words, formal markers for ship makers, soluble paper, ever sad, phonetic, social, generations, and forth. Demonstration parcels bought and sold repeatedly as the record shows, stolen. Did that come up here? I just interrupted. You're all paying so close attention. Just cut that out of my, is that like magic? Did somebody run that up here? That's amazing. Okay. I better start that poem again. Demonstration parcels bought and sold repeatedly as the record shows, stolen. Light comes up over the southeast bridges, normative, quieted. That a place told you it was bleeding into the snow. Cold seeps to bone, born and cut with no language to remember, storage pits, caches, the hanging lots for crows, as land sounds lean into sleet, cottonwood trees in the dark of winter, growing tips, see light, causing seedlings to bend towards the source. Whilst before people disposed in $100 hospital, corporeal lessons lean towards shared logics and finer beats. For the old lamps to show the whips still stuck after centuries in the old wounds, pages to an opposite shore, to earth beneath here, and I, on pavement, or other words over centuries of rotting matter. So sanctuary, monoglot, accent, island pass back into non-standard. Trees suffer catenary curves of ivy and gossamer. Signal lines tremble, sway, and song put to order, to archive under English cloak. Listening horizons burst new density. This time an eye wants to pull apart as well words, light, rain, romancing words composed upon a bridge in the smokeless air, from the sky bridge and the golden dawn pouring over wakening condos or supplanted industry, routes you give in strings and I take as ligaments, called to the surface, revolution, a minimal surface, the most minimal surface other than the plane, a bloom, a smile curved up into sepals on like petals past the parapet, widening to the throat, lingual bone thumbed to spine, a riparian causeway to ocean, audible integrity, bending moments, cable stayed. Extinguishment of a right title is permanent, types of temporary use. To prove title, seasonal fishing, hunting, gathering, trails circle around, seasonal, round. What is this test? The maps are not the territory. Peoples, a regular use and occupation, tenures, every day the drive, economy of tenure holders, perspective, enterprise, tenure holders, tree, felled, farm, ship, mine, permanent, jeopardy, peoples, the declaration, traditional territory, not reconciliation, provocative forestry, provocative fishing, as the crown of ownership values land. Managers make decisions to establish colony, officially spoken boundaries, borders, and property. Maybe just a quick moment. I just also wanted to thank a few people. I like to thank the community that I work in most days of the week. Folks came out tonight. I want to shout out in particular to Jeffrey J. Clark, my husband, who colonial narrative. Noticed the island years ago, and we had a discussion that formed and has been happening for a long time, and it's included a lot of work and research on foot. We've spent a lot of time searching through the area and getting to know a place. Public Works of Canada Plan, North Arm of Fraser River, Poplar Island to CN Railway Bridge. Although there was a small population of sawmills along the waterfront on landside, smoke stacks, beehive burners, collecting ponds, green chain, work yards, a machine is. Many large stacks of cut lumber, logs and squares, shipments to and from unidentified workers of Bucklin Lumber Company, Burnett Sawmill, Capilano Timber Mill, Fraser Mills, Independent Shingle Mill Company, International Wood Products, Alaska Pine Company, Mohawk Lumber Company, Pacific Coast Lumber Company, Pacific Veneer and Plywood, Canfor, Mosquitoes Fly Out, Rainier at one time purchases the island, Royal City Planning Mills, Timberland Lumber Company, Westminster Paper Company, Scott Paper, Kruger, Westminster Shook Mill. Fog rolls in and settles all afternoon, whiles an autumn moon that has lingered for days on the wane, over warships, much more than ships, those ships themselves, massive even, and the building of glaring holes from the sky, sucking pipes that smoke and graphite, transact, prod, extraction, swimouts, enact, heart things, cinder pairs, free birth, autumn on a course, out to sea, past, post, rudders, thick. Dead trees standing sunned and whipped, dry firewood lichen curls kindle. Tree taken downtown, dragged carcass across forest floor to blackened pit. Dredge, spoils, battle, an extreme form of dialogue. Pain embraced by a loud river. Ideality acts public, out of order, rested, returns, the mill turns around of its own free will. A pile of shingles, a mess of refuse, once a roof, time pulls through each instant as the leaves drop, the light filters easier and reveals a listening horizon. Bursts of greenish yellow through branches, blur, water surround, booming anchorage, softly viewed, hollow, long, perpetual job loss, a bridge, specters, eyes with pain, laugh through and conceal a squadron. Bide a wee, know a place you could throw a rock to, hinge your knuckles to hardwood roots, throw farther, a home shored up, listening to able miracle, wit, rumble, fret, a concept, hover, frozen in a spell of free birth, the warmth, loft, contingent on air, the fabric composes, mixing it down. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Cecily. Yeah, this is a wonderful collection. It's wise, and there are these addresses to Proust in kind of a narrative, and there's something about them that's like love letters, but also confessionals, but also imparting wisdom through like an address. It's kind of the opposite of a Dear Abby, in a way. A founding member of Institute for Domestic Research and former member of the Kootenai School of Writing Collective, Catriona Strang is the author of Low Fancy and co-author with the late Nancy Shaw of Busted and Light, Sweet, Crude. She frequently collaborates with composer Jacqueline Leggett and clarinetist Francois Hulot. She lives in Vancouver, where she and her two kids are active in the local home learning community. Please welcome Catriona Strang.
Thank you all for coming. So nice to see a room full of people. I have really a very few thanks, not the least of which is Greg and Christine for missing their dance club. I think the book is so pretty, and I'd really like to thank particularly Greg and Anne-Marie. It was a pleasure to work with you. I also want to thank Colin Smith and Michael Barnhoven for looking at the manuscript, and Kelly Hayden and the Threat of the Christian Heritage Party. Kelly Hayden's my neighbor, and she's an artist, and she offered to be my deadline. So once a week I had to show Kelly a piece of work, and if I didn't, I had to make a donation to the Christian Heritage Party. Needless to say, I never missed the deadline. Without Kelly, there would be no book. Thanks, Kelly. All right. Corked, for Marcel Proust. We need not gulf doubt, nor just pierce our place, whatever grip or drip we might or mean. Dear Proust, I had a point, but I declined to make it, as it has become formidably overlain by classic sediment. Assignments within steady formations are unknown to me, and now I forget my point. The coast is straddled, its smooth sheets complete. Thus, my work projects fields and complexes it has served, placed and dripping. Our outcrops, our base description, how I yearn for parallel sections. There are times when I feel the boundaries of a major new phase pending, almost like a byproduct. However, conclusions are tentative or, more precisely, changeable. Deposits have been made and faults are probable, which constitutes only a fraction of the weight women carry daily. Inkling. Exemption from something perpetuated. This point, this squared point, a garden of proximity. Who can howl or wind what? Once more without. The surprise, remember, it's peculiar how memory so often foils. a structured work of customs porous ramparts. How about backs span? I mean it. This time I've got an inkling. Double points, implicate. Dear Proust, it seems we've been playing on a terrain whose shifting boundaries we've not been permitted to define or even perceive. Like you, I'm unsatisfied by the current situation. Imagine a coincidental hook which might arrive on the flanks of, say, yoga for capitalists with air quality assured, because I'm getting nowhere noteworthy. Memory seems insufficient for me, and yet possession is not the answer. Locks indicate extensive terrain, or so our industrial savages declaim or decant. Yet there are moments when I might almost believe we're restoring. Notes on memory. By partial whence, a doubt remains. Of well in which it has derivative agents, amended memory. A pause is here retained. If only we were able to call back notorious dilatory mostly, or Foyle's derivatives. I can't remember yields a person immemorial. It grieves us commensurate, and praise passes through thought, of which will itself most activates, as in exemption from something perpetuated. Dear Proust, Celeste c'est moi. Daily life consumes me, yet I must tell you that my full and demanding Celeste life provides its own glimmers, shaky, transitory moments external to capital's seemingly omnipotent pulse. These extra-capitalist moments are themselves a form of art, and share a kinship with yours, which I suspect you would reject. This bastard kin, this woman's living snippet art I insist upon. Dear Proust, callous contents alternate with our greener, saltier species. With drifts come unpredictability. Here, there's a finer grain. Here, where a small texture intrudes. Look what I have yielded. There is no evidence for true emplacement. In the grand plan, our northern regions are simply inferred. Accordingly, time lies. Concordant minor sheets report a hybrid aspect, because I've forgotten my glasses once again. Like you, I've never been a fan of baubles, but then again, I am based on data collected during 14 days of fieldwork in 1966. Dear Proust, in the face of life's miseries, somehow we managed to return to an ordinary light. I know this area has been much visited. There seem to be fragments embedded in the flow, and yet textual evidence suggests that through fractures and cleavages, something may have been preserved. I find I often need a visual reminder. By now, this classic formulation is well established. By the way, I'm guessing it's safe to assume you never had to worry about birth control, because what women remember is so often unrecorded. Improbably elegant conniption. Dear Proust, offshore deposits of terrestrial memory have been discovered. This group is most distinctive. There's a noticeable change in slope. Running along similar lines, e.g. stellar wave action, are transitional intervals firmly located in the present. Of course we're for sale. It's an imperfect reconstruction of the past, okay? Imagine a little outstanding detail in image or language formed. Integral information. To explode in hordes of our own budding. So mightily our labors linger. Tentative, and still I cannot bid or outsupply, I cannot consequent upon or imagine. Shall we now integrate a surprising particulate of blurred remains? I cannot help it! Long, complex, minutely delicate, I still cannot voice her. I might once have remembered blue outbreaks and bits, all their lustrous texture, a textile unpreserved. I and variations. It's impossible ground we're leaving on until we bring quite back devastation's response, whatever action is necessary. Having been trained in disputed regions, I'd like to preserve for us, I'd like to voice, I'd like to hoard, I'd like to so long beloved. Dear Proust, while I realize our history has always been all about resource extraction, I can still trace other failed possibilities. And I've seen memories damaged where intervals indicate a repetitive order, as in a life given shape by altered recollections. But I'm moving on now. The evidence has been eroded. Let's just say it's approximately meaningful. Once again, the influence of offshore winnowing can be detected. The importance of public infrastructure. Discomfort in ascending resistance. It comprised a ridged order as well as cutting me to the core. Little control is possible or provided, and yet a distance points stark cut. So imagine hordes formidably overlain. How I yearn for times, however transitory. Hordes have already passed. So much time has already passed, scrupulous hence. Like you, I am perhaps as much a reflection as once more without. Ferried. In our district of neo-logistical, streamlined and ultra-ideological survey, one certain fact arises: gigantic intrusions. My hybrid and complex ease has been examined. Outright paradigm missed functions somewhere on this remembered edge. Sleepy rain, a distinct lack of, with luck, extra parts may be. Shall we now go further? In mulish terms, our melancholy blot constitutes a repeated variation on improvised memory, a gentle resistance whose resemblances evoke an interposed atmosphere that is the exact perception of a discerning nuance. What traits might these variations span? Whose distances shall our verses measure? Depositional. Concordant minor sheets, a small texture intrudes. What on earth have we discounted now? Here sifts a much finer grain. Callous alternate spaces contend with me and my carbon shale deposits, a specific minor strata representing what organized past? Disruptive suspensions eke memories bite, and now ache of it, suspicious misuse, or spit muse despite a stiff mute. Still, the conflicted just might. Dear Proust, once again, several issues are troubling me. First, I do not recall relinquishing jurisdiction over my body. And let's not even start with food safety. Why can I not remember how these things are linked? I'll admit that there are times when I feel perhaps I've lost my way. Like so much else, this contention appears to be a controlled transaction. Perhaps I stumbled into a wrong turn somewhere. After all, I continue to dispute the boundaries imposed upon us. Despite implacable institutional guideline malfunctions, we are still being subjected to hopeless scenarios. Or have I accidentally accessed an illegal memory? As usual, the allegations are mounting. Ever of uneven temperament, parading as gullibility's circumstance, espoused equally by forces toward and however. This place without even any of our greatest move ever, even excessive, without means even. We need not doubt need that place cannot, gulf cannot place fiercely or pierce firstly or evenly vary. We gulf, no doubt, standing here in place. nor grief needs mighty grasp. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
That was great. First half, a lot happened. Welcome back. I hope you had a great break. I hope you bought books from the Paper Hound, who have been manning the cheer for Paper Hound, cheer for bookstores. I hope you got your booze with you. We're going to welcome our next reader, Natalie Simpson. I'm going to say one thing about the book beforehand. When I was reading it, it has all the wonderful play of language that poetry has, but particularly what makes it very interesting is visually and how it reads. It's essentially a waterfall of altering language throughout the poem. Is that a good? Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. So yes, you should buy it. Natalie Simpson's poetry has appeared in several anthologies, including Post Prairie, which came out from Talonbooks in 2005, Shift and Switch, Shy, and the Best Canadian Poetry in English 2013, which I did not get selected for. She long list.
Worst Canadian poetry.
She practices pro bono law in Calgary, Alberta, and curates Filling Station Magazine's Flywheel Reading Series. Her first book of poetry, Crete and Crumble, was published by Talonbooks in 2006. Please welcome Natalie.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you all for coming. And thank you in particular to everyone at Talonbooks for organizing this and for publishing Thrum. I'm thrilled with it. I think this looks beautiful, and I'm so happy to be reading in Vancouver again. If you're feeling a sense of deja vu, it's probably because Catriona and I are wearing the same necklace. I don't know what that might mean, because I try generally not to deal with meaning, but probably a sign of something good. So the first poem I'll read is called Of Geographic Interiors. Adrift and plain song tasked with swim, in which they meadow, in which they stall blame. Lock sought click, lip caught stain. The precious game lumps, the sweet men mind themselves, they bring calamity. Roaming authorly, stitching shambles, to have overly strewn one's petals, to have thrown oneself into blank blocks of stone and sap, of interstices granulate, to have traumatized one's only scale. Each gathering, weathering, interrupt, fluted hewing, seeded sea, balmy rooms, and inner weather, solemn city. Filter out and drip flimsy, empty cloud sunk into its shedding, empty cloud inconstituent, in which they banter and crash, in which in which they welter. Having often tenuously, beautifully, murderously used what empty feathers into and infects. We subject ourselves to identity and craft our unraveling, looped thread, tufted yarn, weave a plausible synthesis of impulses. Form dense verb clusters, looted, lit, stung, drip camps, frail pluck, tick bloom from sprung violets, tick potent. We flay temperate, inconsequential, and waver, an atrocious scrimmage, a center point. They have ripped fault exquisitely into ragged edge of nuance, strong lilting, word clip, an inhabitation. Horse infringement, rotoring clench, they porous root, they bolster. So this book has been some years in the making. The previous poem is one of the newest ones, and this is one of the older ones. It's called Stick. I'd like to loosen your tightwad with lasting all my faster aspects. Ponder the heft of language, lest each bookend borders this break. Black and blister, you simplistic stutter, you utter fine at a time like this. My heavy muted, under humid, and negative form of the verb I have done wrong. Spread a beautiful landscape. Strange bent of mind seeks straightening. Perpetual moments thin into lengths of beat and lashing. Take sand down to seashore for the futility. Things mean here. The guard is down, lip cracks, gravity steps. I have achieved intention. Break out of your shell. So it's a fairly eclectic collection. It contains a lot of different approaches and tones. This poem, I think of the voice in this poem as a sort of advice manual, a kind of, Victorian advice manual. So I called the poem Effulgence and Etiquette, although I don't think any of the advice is any good. Expect affect, trash delirious. Each fingertip, lavishing each surface, offers singular delight. Steady touch, it's open, it's arming. Build archives to ballast, trash affect. Pasting luminous chance to random adhesion, flying less to relish more. Sweet billowing, salty lockets. Why not fake enterprise, cast fodder? Your imagination stakes your only bond. Time warps forest. Stretch a day's length, luxuriate in its insistent tick. A sense of unraveling, drifting, dangerously unconstrained, may strike at odd moments of observation. Give these strikings no track. A calm mind creates its surrounding, project out and filter nothing in. Lend a kinder ear to your peers. Beaming one-to-one may mean becoming more attuned, more exactly animated toward harmonious colloquy. Companions, after all, center a sense of self securely, stay middling. Untimely confession spoils leisure, deep feeling leaks and corrodes. Walls loom and sever, skirt inner, lap courtyards of your own diversion, create lakes of burning precision. Branches catch a willing cloth. You murder your very inversion. Harsh reminders of propriety bead and slip. Be porcelain, be impervious. So this next poem also has a very tongue-in-cheek tone of advice. So maybe this is a sign that I just want to write advice now. That might be a good idea for my next book. Dear poet, you can colonize your reader's hope. Desire puppets them, twist their stringing, muddle them, tangle them, skip their synaptic rhythm to your pulse. You corporealize the leg that leaves them stranded. Your flood may visit their longing. They may yet yearn at your disposal. Remember to capsize your reader's distinction, his sense of taste, her discerning pantomime. Burn in the flavor of their fortune. This reader you've trailed craves capture, lavishing, balm. This next one is one of the older ones in the book. I actually wrote it when I was living in Vancouver quite a few years ago. So you might see something in Vancouver of Vancouver in it, called Turn Away. Try to belie the imagination. Try to imagine a wrinkle, a bruise, a point of convergence. eliminate all memory, proliferate scathing, engender sound. Sound as though touched, rake nerve for encumbrance, rail against and in favor an inconsistent strain. Last, at long last, as the long last light fades, a curtain raised, a half-masked circumstance. Indeed the abstract flails and whimpers, indeed the words are popped. To get at, turn away. To touch here and touch there, so slowly a vein awakes. In the long light somber and glare light brutal, in the hazing day, a tactile nuance forms a soft fog. A soft fog is a fidgety slip into limber touch, the tongue lisping through the typing. Here silence sounds blinking, a grasp in tumult, slowly laughing, so laugh. So those of you who are familiar with my writing probably know that I've been writing sort of back to Gertrude Stein for quite a number of years. And in this collection I've done that in a much more direct way in a couple of poems, where basically I take a line of Stein and then write sort of from it, trying to write towards the sound of the line. So this poem starts with a line from her book, History or Messages from History. And the quotation is, "A moth in the moonlight is a moth indoors." Moth in dorsal spectrum, colors spinning spike. Spent fanning, first grapples, rooted indoors fungal spread. A moth elision, a moth elated. Light stipples steadily, soft lit mothing, indignant, indoving. Colored gray, gold highlights, lit pulse to model. Brown undertones, deep play. Fled moth, ranking layers, strips law from pale wing prints. Moth lined in soft powder, stray flakes in golden ground. Flowing to meet a lit glass end at. Wrought iron is a wrinkled tutor. History comes to grip a long moment. Indoors meant moth draw. Light filters simply. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. The next reader, I feel like I'm going to do my best effort to read her bio and not tell embarrassing stories. Nikki Reimer, when I first met Nikki.
No, don't tell that one.
But not that one. Not the Lisa Robertson one? Okay, not the Lisa Robertson one. What about the time you made bad nachos? That one's pretty good. She thought salsa was to go inside the baking, and it tastes like nacho ragu. And then she was so sad when me and Jonathan told her that that's not how you make nachos. Okay, that's it. Nikki Reimer's first book of poetry is 6. I can't speak to how much I love that book, except it's one of my favorite books ever. She's also published 3 chapbooks, action material, That Stays News, and then my favorite of them, purely based on the title, which is Fist Things First, which is why we're obviously friends. That and the bad nachos. Her latest book is DOWNVERSE. It is, to me, a perfect sequel to Sick. I can't speak to how much I love it without raging on for hours. With a rage on. So sorry, Nikki. They should never have let me be in charge of your bio. She's also the director of the Chris Reimer Legacy Fund Society and she is going to read you lovely poems. Nikki Reimer.
Thank you. There are even more embarrassing stories than that you could have told, and you didn't, and thank you. I'm very happy to be back in Vancouver. Much of this book was written in Vancouver. Lots of people in this room were very important to my writing process and important to me personally, and so thank you all for being yourselves. I cried a bit at intermission. I'm going to not do it now. Thank you also very much to Talonbooks for publishing it, and I owe an apology to Steve Collis, whom I did not thank in the acknowledgements, and he took a look at the manuscript for the press and made some really good structural suggestions, and I didn't say thank you. Okay, I asked Daniel if I should start funny and end sad or start sad and end funny, and he said start sad and end funny, so I'm going to bring you down, but then hopefully I'll bring you up by the end. I'm going to read a portion of a poem that is dedicated to Robert Japansky, who was tasered to death in the Vancouver airport in October 2007. It's called As Long as You're Not Doing Anything Wrong. We wanted a glass of water, rejected ethnicity as a construct, couldn't find the central conceit in this narrative, hoped the RCMP wouldn't forget their training this time, hadn't learned the language, and knew this made us prisoner to our own subjectivity. A man named Paul started to tape us. Our throats constricted as we watched him. We began to panic. The RCMP also rejected. Earlier, weeping and clutching their radiators. An airport supervisor got angry, a loud humming. The wings of the plane visible under the bottom hem of a red t-shirt. The RCMP grew cold at the sight of it, but no one forced them. They wanted to wait by the correct baggage carousel as they hoped to make it to the Braidwood inquiry. They hadn't slept in weeks. Next time, they wouldn't do anything differently. The man named Paul also wanted to wait by the correct baggage carousel. He hadn't learned the language, and he knew this made him afraid. We grew cold when the RCMP started taping. Paul didn't warn us. The airport constricted. There wasn't time. The man named Paul was falling. He had a video camera. Because Paul was under oath, we could hear ourselves shout. The RCMP had a video camera. Our throats grew cold at the sight of it. We were heavy. There wasn't time. We couldn't find a telephone. An airport supervisor couldn't breathe. He was planning his own cartography. The airport supervisor wanted a glass of water. He was drowning. Paul watched. We were proud of him. A loud humming. This airport has a problem. The world is coming in 2010, she says forlornly to no one in particular. But no one is busy making hand gestures at aircraft behind her back, and no one pays attention to the airport's utterances. The airport is a big whiner, no one says, looking pointedly at us. We couldn't find the bathroom. We thought the stewardess might bring us a glass of water, but she hadn't learned the language. Her sorrow was heavy. A man named Paul aimed his video camera, and the mother's throat constricted as he taped us. We all began to panic. The wings of the plane shuddered. They were owners, but they knew personal possession becomes the medium for a fetishized experience of loss, which frightened them. They didn't want to experience any loss, fetishized or not. The wings of the plane were heavy. They were the sentence before the trial. The cockpit was a fetishized experience of authority. The stewardess was prepared to condemn or indict. She visited the online news comment boards daily. Her lack of normativity frightened the RCMP, who began to suspect she was a crazy drunk. The man named Paul concurred. He was freezing. No one wanted a glass of water. They hadn't slept in weeks. The mother's sorrow was visible under the bottom hem of a red t-shirt. Now I'm going to change it. What? Did you like the drinking break? Was that good? That's how you do it. I'm going to dive into some found poetry. I hated your poem. Your poem was so boring. I suppose the ideal basement tenant would be a quiet retiree in good health, partially deaf, with reclusive but not unpleasant habits. Maybe tenants like that are already all taken. That was the title of this poem. Just FYI. Living is not anything to be proud of. A source of smelly porn and public urination. The concept is foreign to the American way. Poor people do not hire people. Decapitate the ones who can actually pay. Smelly people are the center. Demand snot-nosed children in the Constitution. The neighbor should smack some sense into these knuckleheads. Your drunken chant to parent the stinky vermin, winter, return. Be a mentor and beat a rented mule. Do you wear clothes? If you answer yes, you are a hypocrite. You may be a capitalist pig. Overlooked root. I spoke to a young woman who bathed recently. She was an art major. It's all messed up. She's a member of the trophy dream. Go to college, get a job, buy a Prius at Google. The whole child was bad. A waste treatment plant or natural selection. Self-esteem is having a difficult time coping since the environment. They thought and were taught that they too would find a pot of gold to piss in. Their rage is primrose and large. Promised this maniac, loons aren't emerging today. Pretty cartoon losers decrying this tool. Leverage the cats having a temper tantrum. You are not 99%. I don't mean that if 99%. What I mean is that if 99%, what I mean to say is that blazing pink business during college, hardline lefty wetting himself. Failed, abysmal, and myriad slobbering. A few seconds of research leads us to dig too deep. So you and Al Gore's massage therapist sleep at night? For the last poem, I'm going to bring up my friend Dina to assist me.
I dropped my phone. Cool. Keep it here on the floor.
Okay. This is the first time this has been read in public. You're very lucky. Or not. I got a new therapist last week, and my first bit of homework is to not take my smartphone to bed anymore, which means I probably won't be writing any more poems about the internet. So, don't talk like that. Don't talk like that. The declarative, the dialogic, the decade goes pop. I love it when they read the hashtags to me. We are late-stage capitalist, aspirational marketing machines. Know the man on the commercial. Friends of ours come to our house and say, wow, we didn't realize you could buy that. We believe that words are a substitute for reality. and in fact prefer to pay $5 for a
Cash
cup
cow.
of coffee. We're for the lump and rolls.
Oats and hay.
We want to be paid for our
Butches.
work. Whiny babies just want the right
Spoiled.
to complain. We want to write setting and
Over.
interiority. Stars.
Just like pus.
We're for the movie terrorists.
Guilty neoliberals shouldn't should.
We like frat boys.
Guilty heteronormative desire.
We don't like sluts who cry rape the
Guilty
next
walk
day.
of shame.
We already said we take no position on Gaza, so don't try to trick us
Guilty
into talking about it.
Guilty backseat political dung beetle.
We are for idle chatter, vague reminiscences, ghostly encounters,
Ghostly nostalgia.
retro night. We are against hand jobs
Like
on buses.
gross.
We're for the MILF and the celebrity baby bump watch as archetypes, but against the Octomom as Exhibit A. Sometimes can't remember which is
Rather
which.
the divide.
We're for 11th hour attacks of conscience.
Remember the scriptures.
We're for freedom of the
Press
press.
the red button.
We are pro-pornography as a legitimate form of sexual expression, but hugs make us
Don't stand.
uncomfortable.
Don't stand so. Don't stand so close to me.
We are against governments in the boardrooms of the nation, but for government in the backseats of our fuel-efficient pilots.
minister.
We are for old media, but we thank you not to mention that to new media, and for God's sake, don't
Guilty
blog it.
dead tree fetish.
We're against the legalization of
And
prostitution.
sex trafficking.
We're against meetups.
Cheesy.
We are for Craigslist as a neoliberal marketplace. We understand voter apathy.
Sorry. What? Lesser vile fatigue.
Lesser evil fatigue.
I'm sorry.
We'll get through it. We'll get through it.
Hashtag lame.
Hashtag, we'll get through it. We're for guilt as an emotion, a practice, and a negotiating tactic.
Jesus, Mom.
Except when our mothers do it. We're against make it new.
Neo-postmodernism.
Against working for a living.
Lazy.
For how to become an expert.
Get
in 10 easy steps.
monetized.
Against soft serve, but for some
Lactose
horror.
intolerant scrubbing.
We're for yanking them out of the closet, kicking and screaming.
As for... Why are some of these so hard? Ask forgiveness later.
Forgiveness. Ask
Forgiveness
forgiveness later.
Ask forgiveness later.
Hashtag we should have
Hashtag
practiced.
we should have practiced.
For sentimentality, but against bathos.
Who fucking who?
We are against the Da Vinci Code. We still mourn Da Vinci's
Guilty
request.
highbrow snobbery.
We're against groupthink. We prefer groupthink. I'll do that one for you. Parker Hannafin O-ring.
See, that was good.
Yeah, that one was
We
hard.
should have reversed that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're for you, but against your dick of a brother.
Beasley bloodlines.
We are pro-choice, anti-capital, for the punishment of the innocent, against the midnight stopping, against the heart that wants what it wants, for the horror, against the fear, against the banality of evil as a conceptual framework.
Monsters.
We resist
Sometimes.
servitude. We abhor
Round the
circumlocution,
mulberry bush.
detest politics,
Boring.
lack judgment. We are against moral oral. We just like to party. 100% of the shots, torpor, for torture porn, against Abu Ghraib. Are we for or against narrowcasting? Listen to your thesis proposal on broadcasting in the 21st century. Against Deadwood on the corkboard. Against making global terror. Praying for you and your family. Getting off the grid for a bit. Are we for or against the movement of God?
Vaginitis.
Against PTSD coverage for veterans? We are always either over or under the weather. We prefer to blame the victim. We are against the richification of hippiedom. We reject coral bucks, milk bucks, teen bucks, tween bucks, hick bucks, slight bucks, fugly bucks, sickle bucks, cracker bucks, slipper bucks, trigger bucks, shank bucks, bleep bucks. We stray, we strain, we seethe, we siege. We want you to get your dirty paws out of our lentils. We are all disrupted subjects. We are all inexperts. We are all accustomed to the concept that within the neoliberal globalized sphere there is no we. We are all striving towards individual self-improvement every day
Insert
and every way.
dinosaur coloring book here.
We are disassociated internet hipsters, terminal tightest pants ever hipsters, depressed non-prescription eyeglasses hipsters, medicated unkempt greasy hairsters, upwardly mobile, downwardly facing dogsters. We are ironic graphic tee lodestars. We are We're post, avant, avant. We are the new moderns. We gain weight in the and lose weight in the. Thank you.
I just want to thank all of you. Daniel's going to come up here and do something weird. I mean, great. He's going to come up here and do something great. Thank you all so much for coming to the Talonbooks Spring Lunch. All these wonderful books, M.A.C. Farrant, Catriona Strang, Cecily Nicholson, Natalie Simpson, and Nikki Reimer. All of these books, again, available from the amazing local independent bookstore, the Paper Hound. It's on Pender Street. You should go there. There are donuts nearby. It's amazing. $15 a piece, or for the low, low package price, $60 for this amazing variety pack. You can't get it anywhere else. Only here, only tonight. We want to thank Talonbooks for having Daniel and I host. We want to thank the Western Front for being such a wonderful venue and just a great place in the city. And you guys for being here and just looking really great and listening your hardest, like you really paid attention in kindergarten. Thank you so much, and buy some books, have another drink, and talk to some writers.